Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Pig's Ear in Review here at the Tojo Dojo, one of the only shows where we're talking about what we've been watching, what we've been playing, maybe what we've been reading here and there a little bit. I'm Myshtuff, joined by Riku Rose, as always. How's it going?
Good, man. You?
Pretty good, pretty good. So today we got some heavy hitters to discuss of some recent shows. We got Stranger Things, which just released its final couple of episodes, aka like movies, pretty much, from what I'm understanding, for these episode lengths.
Yeah.
Yesterday. So we'll get into that in a second. We got Obi-Wan, which also wrapped, I think it was last week, and then Moon Knight, which that one finished a little while ago, but I just got around to watching that one finally. So before we get into those, though, just a quick thing to mention, something that might make you proud here is I started a JRPG. So dipping my feet into your waters a little bit. So a couple months ago, I got a buy two get one deal on games because I got Elden Ring and Ghostwire Tokyo, which I've already talked about on some previous episodes. But the third one that I got because of that deal was Shin Megami Tensei 5 for the Nintendo Switch. So played about 4 hours. I'm getting my JRPG, feet wet here, like I said. So it's been interesting so far. And
you'll have a waifu before you know it.
See, that's the main goal. That's really what I'm into it for. So, but I'm also, funny enough, test driving my new Switch because my last one finally shit the bed as well, along with the Joy-Con. So now I have a Switch OLED, which is nice. But
they are nice.
I do like it. Like if you already have a Switch, I wouldn't recommend just upgrading it for the purposes of that. But if you have to get a new one, either the first time or because your last one broke, like mine, then I would recommend getting it because it's only like a $50 difference, and I would say it's very much worth it. So that's been fun to play with the new Switch because mine was like an original model. It was like 5 years old, so it was seeing some wear.
Starting to feel a bit Fisher Price, wasn't it?
Yeah, surprisingly, it was kind of funny to hold a new one in my hand right next to it. I'm like, damn, this this feels
more
different,
plasticky and
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, just thought I'd mention that. So stay tuned. Another, I don't know when I'll finish that game in like 10 years at this rate. If we're still going on here, you'll hear me talk about it. All right. So let's just kick it off. I'll turn it over to you to talk about Stranger Things.
Okay, so where are you at with Stranger Things? You ever watched it? I know you're a big horror fan, but
yeah, so I've watched the first 3 seasons and I loved them, but I've not had a chance to watch season 4 because I don't have an active Netflix subscription right now. I'll probably resubscribe in another couple weeks because of all the other crap we've been watching. But yeah, I love horror, so I know I'm going to like this new season, but I just have not gotten around to watching it.
I'd say this is, I'm not like a person who gets scared of stuff, but this is the most horror themed season of the show. Like, it really goes out there, like, to the point where I wouldn't, like, have my wife watch this because she gets scared.
Really?
She gets scared of, like, Harry Potter, like, when Voldemort's on screen. So I'm like...
Okay.
I'm like, this is a no-go for you. I'm like, you would not enjoy this whatsoever. Like,
okay.
If you've seen horror before, it's nothing over the top. But
sure.
For people who... I think we've spoke about, there are people who literally watch Star Wars and Marvel, and that's it. Like, this... I think this would be a bit much for them.
Yeah, well, and it seems like, I mean, obviously Stranger Things already is like a nostalgia love letter to the 80s, but for a lot of people who aren't so much into horror, the 80s is pretty much considered like some of the best horror movies that ever came out because of like practical effects and just cool storylines, and same thing with like sci-fi. I mean, I know you see a Back to the Future shirt, obviously, like that era of all of that type of stuff. So I'm not surprised they kind of leaned into that, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, this seems like a love letter to Nightmare on Elm Street this season.
Oh, nice. Okay.
To the point where Robert Engold actually is a character in it.
As himself, or
no, not as himself.
Oh, okay.
Okay. He has a role in this new season.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
I've enjoyed this season. I thought the first one was really good. I thought the second one was pretty weak. You could kind of tell they rushed it out the door. They didn't really know what to do with it. I really enjoyed the third season, and I really enjoyed this one.
Okay.
The last 2 episodes came out yesterday, and that was 4 hours of my life.
But like,
That
was it worth it or not worth it? Sorry, like, was it noticeable or
Yeah, it was.
okay?
This is my main complaint with this season of the show is these episodes didn't need to be this long.
hmm
I've seen the complaint that there's too many characters now. I
Okay.
don't agree with that. I
hmm
think they separate the characters too much. Like they break
Okay.
them up into two smaller groups
hmm
to the point where during the last fight they are broken up into 6 or 7 groups.
Just to like build the tension, so they're not
Right,
ganging up on people,
well, because
or
they give everyone a story arc, right? So this
hmm
person's doing this and they're fighting that person. This person's doing this and they're fighting that person.
yeah.
Right? To the point where someone like in the last, I'm not going to spoil it, don't worry. But like
hmm
someone in the last episode like gets attacked, right?
hmm
And it cuts away to other people, cuts back to other people, cuts back to other, and you come back to the person who got attacked as if like no time's passed whatsoever. It's
Sure.
been 1 minute, but it's 20 minutes
hmm
later in the episode.
Oh, interesting.
Right, so you have this big final battle where everyone's doing their own thing, and essentially what is meant to be like less than 5 minutes in real time takes half an hour.
Yeah, that can be a little jarring to watch.
And you just forget what people are doing because there's so much going on. You go, oh yeah, they're fighting that thing. Okay.
Okay.
It just takes the tension away from it. And
hmm
they try to make the tension last so long as well at
Yeah.
the end that you're like, yeah, if you had kept it to like 3 groups,
hmm
like that would have made more coherence. And there's also not a lot of reason why they had to be split up into such small groups either. You could have written around it.
Right. So I'm curious then why they do it. Is it just more to give them a little more time with their
I
own little
think
monologues, or
I think it's because everyone in this show is now such a big star.
that is true. This has spawned a decent amount of like now well-known actors. So that's a good point.
Yeah, it's not like Game of Thrones where like although that show was massive, maybe 1 or 2 people came out of that with a movie career.
Right.
Like I feel like most of these kids and most of these actors, like David Harbour, like
Right.
is now like well known. Winona
Right.
Ryder, like when this show started, I think most people would have considered her career sort of like come and gone.
Right.
Then you've got all of the kids that everyone loves,
Mm-hmm.
like Millie Bobby Brown. There's the guy who looks like Timothy Chalamet.
Oh, Finn Wolfhard.
Yeah, him. Everyone
Yeah.
likes the kid with the lisp. Yeah,
Yeah, I forget his
yeah.
actual name. But yeah, well, I guess okay, the one thing, and once again, I haven't watched it yet, but like the other thing that I think even from the trailers is a little noticeable is the fact that I mean, I don't know what the timed break is between season 3 or 4, but like these kids look like they're almost in college now at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know, do they do a good
I think they're
job?
meant to be like 16.
Okay, so I mean they're
Yeah.
getting there. I mean, it's not unusual for like actual college people to play high schoolers either. Like Tom Holland plays a high schooler and he's like what 24 or something like that. So
Yeah, but
I
he
guess
does look 12, to be
he
fair.
does, that is true. He
I
does.
mean, it's like I'm wearing a Back to the Future shirt, and like you see Michael J. Fox like trying to play a
hmm
16-year-old, and you're like,
Yeah, like
like they pull it off a lot better, whatever their age is.
all right, that's
Because
fair.
I
That's
feel like
fair.
Millie Bobby Brown, I saw she only recently turned like 18.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I mean, they're I guess still in that general age group, so it's
Yeah.
fine then. Okay.
Yeah, honestly, that is my just main complaint with the show this season. Is just like every episode could have had half an hour chopped off of it because every episode is over an hour long. It's around an hour and a half an episode,
But I
and
mean, is it like actual plot, or is there just a lot of filler, or?
I honestly I don't think there's a lot of filler because it's not like anyone's wasting time. The plot is always moving forward, but because there's
Hmm.
so many people broken up into so many groups,
Okay.
sometimes you'll see a group twice in an episode.
hmm
And like their story does not progress at all in that episode because they're focusing on the other stories.
hmm So
I go on.
I was gonna say, I'm curious. What if they made the season more episodes, but had better editing to like have more the stories more for a particular group in one episode, and then a different episode is another group, and have them more self-contained rather than just mixing everything into a shorter episode or
I
fewer
just
episodes.
I just think there's certain stories that didn't have to be there.
Okay.
Like, as I say, it moves forward, and yeah, but you could have written around a lot of it. Like, spoilers for the end of season 3, but like, just skip like 30 seconds if you care.
Mm-hmm.
Millie Bobby Brown's character, 11, lost her powers.
Mm-hmm.
So a big chunk of this is like, I've got to become powerful again. I think you could have just been like, oh, you know what? After a while, she got back. Like,
Yeah.
slowly. Like Spider Man 2, like, she got
Yeah,
some
or like the
confidence, and that was it. Like, it didn't need to
yeah, or
be
the
7 episodes.
yeah, or like the whole. I feel like that's a complete tangent for a second with Metroid. They keep doing that with all the
Mm.
games where you start like every single one with, "Oh, I lost my powers again. I have to build them back up," and it's like, "Oh my God, can we stop doing that?"
It's also not that impressive when you've seen them with the powers before. So when
Right,
they
right,
get powers, you're like, okay, they're back to where they were. Like, I'm not that shocked or anything.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
could have just had them.
exactly.
No
Yeah,
one would have questioned it. Like,
right.
and you just wasted a lot of time. That person had to split off into their own little group, into
Hmm.
a story that was it as well. And I really like Millie Bobby Brown. I think she's a really good actress, but her
Hmm.
story in this was the worst one. To the point
Interesting.
where when you're watching a show and you start looking at your phone.
Yeah, that's the indicator. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone else I was engaged, but with her character, I was like, okay, they're talking. Okay, I'm just gonna
Well,
look
maybe
at
I
something.
guess because there has been a pretty big focus on her for the previous seasons, and I guess maybe it's nice. I'm maybe guessing to see some of those other characters, but to your point, maybe there's too many of them, and it just becomes like crazy. Um,
Right, but what people like is
yeah,
those characters interacting with each other
yeah,
and then playing off each other. Like, I think it was in season 2, they had the kid with the lisp and Steve team up,
hmm,
right? And
yeah,
everyone's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, what an unlikely duo. And then ever since, they always have them team up.
Uh huh.
And I'm like, no, have different combinations. Like, yeah,
Sure.
it was fun seeing them together, but yes, and they've got a bit of a bromance going.
Hmm.
But like, mix it up a little.
Right, right. So yeah, I'm curious because like there's so many. I don't know. This is maybe another example of like how much further do you take a show? I mean, it sounds like it's still a good season, don't get me
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
wrong,
yeah.
but like, I don't know, at what point do you run out of, well, I don't know, is it maybe running out of, not running out of ideas, but are they afraid to then break from what people already like, maybe a little bit too,
I will
possibly?
say the ending was unexpected.
Okay,
I was very impressed with the ending.
okay, okay.
Okay, and I think they've said there's going to be a season 5, like
Hmm.
publicly and
And like
stuff.
and a spin-off apparently at some
I
point.
wouldn't be surprised. Like,
Yeah,
this is one of those things where this universe is going to be around for a while.
yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we got like one set in London in the 80s, and like
Mm,
they're gonna run this into the ground.
probably.
Uh, it's too lucrative, let's be honest, and that's just the
Yeah.
way things work now. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a movie in theaters like Stranger Things.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's once again, as we've also talked, like definitive, like good wrapped up endings are preferable. So I hope they know when it's time to do
Mhm.
that. So I mean, they may still have a very good story for season 5, but I would want them to like call it quits when they're at their highest point. Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think they're still riding that wave. I'm not like if they ended it at season 5, I'll be perfectly happy if they stick the landing, right?
Yeah.
Um, One thing I will say that I really like about this show, and I wish more shows would do, is have a movie or a show that isn't set in present day, but
Hmm.
don't make that the sole focus of it. Because did you ever
Okay.
watch Boardwalk Empire with Steve Buscemi?
I no. Mm-mm.
So it was like 1920s
Hmm.
in Atlantic City, right?
Yep.
And literally every scene, it would be like, well, we beat the Germans in a war. They won't be coming back anytime soon. And you're like, okay, yep, you're going to fight the Germans again. We get it.
Right.
Oh, there'd be a
Hmm.
doctor who's like, I think this man needs cocaine because that is good for you. And
Hmm.
you're like, okay, I get it. Cocaine's not good for you. And then
Yeah.
they'd be like, oh, can you believe that you could get to Ireland in 6 weeks on a boat? That is so
Hmm.
quick. And you go, yeah, I get it. Like
It's
every scene is like a
kind of
comment to make you feel smart.
Yeah, or like a wink at the audience type of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
and Stranger Things, it's more the tone. Like there is the odd thing they throw in here and there, which I wish they wouldn't do, where someone's like, "Internet, I don't see that catching on."
Right, right.
Right, but for the most part, it's the tone and the feel and the music and the clothes and
Hmm.
stuff like that, right? And
Sure.
like, it is more fun to watch kids fight demons with like slingshots, walkie
Hmm.
talkies, than like an iPad.
That's a good point.
Because
I
how
mean,
many?
but
Go on.
I was gonna say though, I think as we've also mentioned before, nostalgia can be it can be good, but it can also be bad where that's like all you're relying on. And I'm curious though, like how much more 80s nostalgia can be squeezed out of this, I guess,
See, I don't
especially.
think of it as such like an 80s nostalgia thing though, because I don't think they. I think that's
Okay.
just a setting for this show.
Okay.
Like, I
Okay.
don't think it is about the fact that it's set in the 90s. I think that's how they get away with the music they use, the clothes
Hmm.
they use, things like that. Um, the amount of films and shows I watch now from the 80s and 90s, I'm like, this wouldn't work now because we all have smartphones.
Right. Yeah.
Like, imagine, I don't know, Groundhog Day, if you had a mobile
Right.
phone, right? A smartphone.
Hmm. Or you said
And
like Seinfeld, like that wouldn't
yeah,
work either.
no, how many episodes of like George trying to break into a woman's apartment to erase an answering machine message or something?
Right. Right.
Something crazy like that. And
Hmm.
Vince Gilligan, who writes Better Call Saul,
Yep.
I actually saw recently. He is writing something new,
Oh,
and
perfect.
he said this is the first time he's ever had to consider smartphones and social media in anything he's written.
Yeah, because even with Breaking Bad, that was towards the very early stages
Like
of like, yeah,
2008, 2009, like when
right,
Facebook was like taking off. Like,
right, but it still didn't really impact a whole lot to the
no.
story. So yeah, that's a good point. Hmm.
Yeah, and he said like he's actually come across a few times where he's gone the right saying he's like, oh no, like people would just like Google it or
Yeah,
figure it out this way or that wouldn't work because of this. And I think you don't have, like if you set a movie in the early '90s, it just opens up so many more avenues for what you can and can't do and stuff.
it does. And I'm trying to think. I forget. I know not too long ago, I don't know if it was a horror movie or some sort of movie I watched that it was set in like in modern times, but the way they kind of got around it was, oh, like cell signal is out or they drop
Hmm.
their phone in the water so they can't, like there had to be a reason for why they can't use their cell phone like
Yeah,
really early on or something. And so like if you can do that naturally, then I think it could still work, but otherwise then yeah, it just becomes, to your point, a little ridiculous.
yeah, yeah. No, I
Mm.
I just want more shows to do that. Why does everything have to be in present day?
Yeah, it
Who
does.
Framed Roger
Mhm.
Rabbit set in the '40s? Like,
Yeah, that's a good
you
point.
know, like why not?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree, I agree.
Overall, though, I would give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
Season 5, just make each episode 45 minutes. I'd really appreciate it. And then I ain't got to worry that I haven't got 20 hours to watch a show in one day before people at work start spoiling.
Yeah, and once again, I'm usually pretty lucky since I don't use social media where I don't get too many things to spoil, but as we've also said, Google
Mm-hmm.
News does a great job of spoiling stuff
Yep.
for me with headlines and articles, and so I try to avoid that. So far, nothing's been spoiled for me for Stranger Things just yet, so I'm counting on that not happening. But as far as the episode length goes, yeah, I agree with you. Uh, because once again we've talked about that as well, where like you don't have to do that. And to be honest, one of the movies I've been wanting to watch this year that I still haven't is Batman, but I haven't because I haven't found a 3 hour fucking time block to sit down and watch the damn thing, but I really want to
Mm-hmm.
because I love Batman. So hopefully I'll watch that soon. But that's the one thing I will say I'm not looking forward to with this, is because I believe my wife wants to watch this too, and just finding time for us to watch a show together can already be difficult. But now finding like 20, I mean, I'm sure it's not 20 hours, but like a ridiculous amount of time, it's going to be a little difficult.
Yep. Yep.
But no, that's good. I'm glad, and I'm glad they're leaning into the horror. And I guess once again, without spoiling it, though, I know as we said, there's going to be a season 5. Is it like? Do they make it like a direct continuation of 4? Does it seem like they can do a whole bunch of other crazy stuff, or?
it pretty much it ends on a cliffhanger.
Okay, that's fair.
That's all I'll say. Like that,
Okay.
you know it's coming back, and you know what it's going to be.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. And I mean, they haven't seen, or sorry, they haven't said like when it's premiering, because like it took a number of
No.
years for this to come out,
Well, I think
right?
this got hit by COVID. I think that was an issue.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't think they've
No,
said any. And also, I haven't kept up with it because
yeah, yeah. Okay.
when it comes
So
out,
hope
I'll watch it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So hopefully in a year, roughly, we'll see
Mhm.
other shows. Because like even with like with Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, like the season finale is next week, but they just said a tweet like yesterday saying they wrapped production on season 2 already, and like it
Mhm.
could literally premiere as early as later this year, early next year, depending on how quickly they do it. So it seems like production schedules are somewhat going back to normal with shows now. I mean, they're taking
Yeah.
precautions obviously where needed, but it seems like it's
I
getting a
think they're
little bit
still catching up slightly. That's the
better.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be watching it, so I'll let you know once I get around to it, and yeah, we'll talk more about it. So that's cool. That's cool.
All right.
Okay, so Obi-Wan, and of course, I'm wearing my Darth Vader shirt in honor of us discussing this one. So before going into Obi-Wan, though, just a baseline here. What would you say your relationship is, not just with Star Wars, but even more specifically prequels? I mean, a little bit of both, I guess. What would you say?
Star Wars, love the original trilogy, all three.
Hmm.
Prequels, hate all three.
Hmm.
One of two films my dad ever took me to see was The Phantom Menace.
Uh-huh.
He sat down and like started, and it's like there's an intergalactic trade war, and my dad's like, "Oh, I like politics," and then like some Japanese aliens turned up, and he was like, "Nope," and he went to sleep.
All right,
Um,
perfect.
and
Perfect.
then I have ever since Force Awakens, I feel like I've been
Hmm.
50-50. Either I
Okay.
really like it or I really hate it,
Okay.
depending on what it is.
Sure.
But I'm kind of burned out.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think that I don't think we're alone in as far as the burnout goes, where they bought Star Wars and then they went nuts with it. And I think there was even more planned, and they've sort of scaled back. But at the same time, I saw an article the other day saying like 9 more shows are coming out over the
Yeah.
next couple of years or something insane. And then that's where like, yeah,
Well,
they
Solo was a bit it didn't do well,
right.
and then I
Hmm.
think they can't because Obi-Wan and Boba Fett I think were meant to be movies,
Correct. Yeah. Hmm.
so they went uh-oh, but then Mandalorian was a big hit, so they sort of
Right.
moved everything over to Disney Plus.
Exactly. Yeah. And then as I guess a brief recap for me. So Star Wars, like I honestly barely grew up watching the original trilogy. I mean, granted, by the time episode 1 came out, I was 9 years old. So I not like I really had I guess an opportunity per se, but like I knew of Star Wars. It's hard not to, even at a young age. But then when episode 1 came out, I was, and I mean, you could say you as well, kind of the perfect age for those movies kind of coming out. So funny enough, episode 1 was the first movie I saw twice in theaters,
Hmm.
and then episode 2 I thought like I mean I saw 2 and 3 in theaters of course as well, but like episode 2 I thought was fine even at a younger age. I'm like this is okay, it wasn't the greatest, but then
That's my
episode
least
3,
favorite.
yeah, I think a lot of people's from how I understand it. And then episode 3, I remember being like hyped as fuck. Not just me, but like a lot of people were,
Hmm.
because every effing commercial was the scene where Darth Vader like rises from the table after he gets destroyed basically in the lava, and they just kept playing that over and over. Like I vividly remember that on TV all the time, and so I,
Hmm.
I just remember it was there all the time. And it was also funny growing up in America for the prequels. I don't know if it was like that maybe in the UK, but they had like everything was branded,
Yep.
like Pepsi machines, like Burger King
Cereal, like
cereals. Yeah,
yeah.
like they went nuts with the promotional material. And not to say they don't do that now, but like that was like my first experience seeing something on that massive scale.
Well,
Personally.
that's the thing with like Star Wars coming out every 3 to 4 months now.
Hmm.
Is like that was an event. Even when Force Awakens came out, like
Yeah, yeah.
that was an event because we hadn't had a Star Wars movie in like 10 to 15 years.
Right, right.
Right, I remember being at dun, 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 like as the Star Wars and the like writing goes up, and you're like, oh, but like you don't get that anymore because it's out so much.
I think the funniest promotional tie-in I ever saw when Episode 7 came out is I went to the grocery store, and you know how like oranges come in kind of like a mesh wire sort of like bag usually,
Mm-hmm.
like if you get them like in a group. I saw
BB-8.
BB-8 oranges, but the thing is, the oranges, there was nothing on the oranges, but the bag title said BB-8 oranges, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, what are we doing here? So I thought that one cracked me up. I got to be honest, but yeah, it was ridiculous. But
I think every kid at my school had like a pod racer like
yeah.
lunch bag or something like that when episode one
Mhm.
came out.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have some Star Wars games that are older, and I even on the Switch bought the Pod Racer re-release, Star Wars Pod Racer, which I think is still a fun game personally. But yeah, so there was a lot of stuff prequels. I know a lot of people hate them, some people don't. But like even you've even said to me how like in recent years there seems to be a bit of a resurgence of people loving them again who used to hate them, which I think is kind of funny as well.
Yeah,
So for me, I can't say I ever hated them, but I would never, even after watching them. I was like, yeah, I'm fine with them, but they're not like the greatest things ever to me. But I will say though, the one thing that did stick out to me, and I'm not just saying this because we're about to talk about Obi-Wan, but like Ewan McGregor, I love as an
hmm
actor. Like he's just an awesome actor, and so I do even now when I go back and watch those, I it's fun to watch Ewan McGregor. Like I don't know, I just have a good time watching him. I think he's just a good actor,
I
and I know.
feel mean saying it because I feel like the guy's been beaten to death over the last
Mhm,
20 years. But the
mhm.
issue with those movies is not the actors.
Sure.
The issue with those movies is one person.
hmm
I'm not gonna, because I do feel bad for the guy because I've seen interviews with him where he actually
Sure.
seems like quite upset and quite like down
hmm
about it to the
hmm
point where he just has literally been like, I don't care about the fans anymore. Like his reputation
hmm
got destroyed after those
Yeah,
movies came out.
yeah, and I think, like I said, it had the one thing that has been nice in recent years is seeing some people take a more positive spin on the movies, and at least the parts that they liked in terms of the acting, or even if they didn't like the writing, like they just like maybe seeing some of those characters again. But yeah, I mean, I can fully understand why people still may not like them, especially compared to the original trilogy.
hmm
But then obviously you have the sequel trilogy, and people don't like those very much. So
I
it's
like
funny to
two
see
out
that.
of three of them.
I would say it just wasn't cohesive. Like,
Yeah, they didn't have
you
a
know,
plan. They should have done Lord of the Rings, film it all back to back, and yeah.
exactly. So, anyways, so we could keep talking about all that. I'll get back to Obi-Wan, I guess. But anyways, so Obi-Wan really is just the time period between episode 3 and 4 where he's out in the desert being a like a cave
Hermit.
dweller for a little bit, basically. Yeah, just kind of hanging out. And
Literally
so,
living in a cave.
yeah, I mean, yeah, quite
They
literally.
have homes on Tatooine, but he's like, nah, cave.
Nah, no. Yeah, I mean, granted, I guess he doesn't have a whole lot of crap to lug around, so he's like, all right, I guess I'll just hang out in a
He
cave.
has a house in episode 4 as well, though.
Well, but that's after this, so maybe he finally got around to it. He's
I,
like, all
he
right.
got a mortgage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's the mortgage interest rate on Tatooine? I'm curious. Can I get a show about a real estate development
Goes to
of
Jabba the
Tatooine?
Hutt, and he's like, no bank will take
Yeah,
my
sorry.
Jedi pay slips. Uh,
Can I give you an IOU for that one? Um, so yeah, I mean, it's basically, you always heard about him hanging out in between 3 and 4, and I guess people were wondering what happened, and so that's
no,
essentially
they
what
weren't.
this.
No, they
Well,
weren't.
sorry,
People weren't
that's a
wondering.
sorry. Yes, Disney thought that people were wanting to know what were happening, or someone thought, I
No
guess.
one was wondering. We all saw the end of episode 3, and you went, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I guess he goes sits in a cave for 20 years.
But doing what?
Sitting. So he did.
You don't want to know what a man was doing for 20 years on his own.
He was not going on adventures.
Well, apparently he was, because that's what this show is. Um, so I think the idea, okay, when this was just a movie, I think they could have probably told maybe a singular, fairly tight story. But because it got turned into a show, it's what, 6 episodes, so they had to, not drag it out per se. I mean, it's a relatively shorter show, but like they
I
had
think
to
they're
fill it with some
40
things.
minutes each, roughly.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So
And so,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, basically, I guess as far as what the show is, it's to some extent going on this adventure where, um, wait, I can't tell if this is a spoiler. I mean, did they do in the trailer for the little child that he's with? I can't
I
remember.
think that's meant to be a surprise because
Okay, so I
I
won't.
saw the show and I didn't know that this child was in
Okay,
it.
okay, so I'm glad I didn't say this particular person. So he is with a child, doing adventures.
Not
So
Luke.
I won't go. Yeah, not Luke. But then you have some other characters. So obviously Obi-Wan, and you have Darth Vader and slash Anakin. But then you also have the introduction. So I think the one part that's cool is they introduce the Inquisitors, which are more from the
Yeah,
Jedi Fallen Order game, if I'm not mistaken.
I know. I think they're in the Clone Wars because here's what I've also recently started doing with Star Wars as well.
Hmm.
Is like Book of Boba Fett did it, where some people turn up and just based on how the alien looks, you can tell that
Hmm.
they're in a like spin-off show or something.
Yeah,
Like you're
exactly.
like, oh, that's a Clone Wars person. I've never watched Clone Wars, but I'm just like, yeah, they look like someone who's in like Clone Wars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I guess that's a good point because as far as the TV shows go, like Mandalorian and Boba Fett came out. Mandalorian was pretty successful. Boba Fett, I'm not the biggest fan of.
best
I think,
episodes were Mandalorian season 3 episodes.
yeah, pretty much. Other than that, it's just a dude taking a bath like
Yeah,
half the time.
we
So
get
that
some
wasn't
bath time in
particularly.
this as well, though.
Yes, there is. There's a little bit of bathing in this one, which is great. I don't know why there's so much bathing in these shows, but apparently I guess
It
they're
gets
hitting a certain
sandy on
demographic.
Tatooine.
I guess that's true. It does. They got to rejuvenate.
Yeah.
So yeah, they bring in some characters you may have heard of, may have not. But of course, the main attraction is Obi-Wan, and then you have Darth Vader. And I guess uh, I think what I'm trying to think of why some people have really enjoyed this show and some people have not. Like, and I think it depends on what you want to get out of the show, because if you're expecting some like crazy big reveal of this in between period, you're not going to get that. Like, you really won't at all. But if you're going into it because you love seeing Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen and kind of like that interaction, I think you'll get that. I wish there would have been a little bit more maybe on Hayden or like Darth Vader's side, because I mean it's called Obi-Wan Kenobi, but like,
I think the issue is that this is a sequel to the prequel trilogy,
yeah.
and that can't be helped for those actors anymore. There's nothing you can do about those
Yeah.
movies anymore. But you never felt like they had this great relationship in the prequels
Hmm.
because they just argue all the time. They're never
Yeah.
friends. So you don't really buy that they've got this great friendship that they lost in this
Hmm.
show.
Yeah, and that's where like it's less the movies did that and more the fandom after the fact, I
Yeah,
think, have built up this idea of what they were. And I'm not like necessarily against it, but I think it did it's more, to your point, it's more than maybe what the movies let on that it was, I guess, if that's a
yeah.
weird way of saying it. Yeah.
That's the main issue is you're trying to build off what the movies that most people didn't like before did,
Hmm.
and that's a tough ask. I'm
Yeah. Hmm.
actually when Disney bought Star Wars, there was a part of me that wondered if they would remake the prequels.
Oh man, that
Like
would be sacrilege, I feel like. I don't
they
know.
did away with all like the other canon and stuff, didn't they?
Well, they did separate what was canon versus not. That I can understand, I guess. But to actually like, could you imagine any of the Star Wars movies being remade, like original or prequels? Like, I
In a
think that
hundred
they would get too much shit.
years, I reckon they could.
That's a good. That's a good point.
What's a
It
New
maybe just
Hope?
not enough
40 years
time.
old, 45 years old now.
I
Like
mean, I guess I could also argue Force Awakens was like a pseudo remake of Episode 4. Like, there
yeah,
was a lot of similar beats.
so New Hope's 45 years old, right? Roughly.
Right.
And
Uh huh.
I watch that now and I like A New Hope, but even I'm
Uh
like,
huh.
yeah, this is like not aged great.
Hmm.
You know, it's not even just like the effects or anything like that. It's just the way like the movie's structured as well and stuff like I can't imagine sitting my
Hmm.
6-year-old nephew down and showing that as his first Star Wars movie and he loves it.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's kind of the same issue anytime I talk about Star Trek, of course, which lately is every fucking episode, so sorry, get used to it. If you don't like hearing about Star Trek, I'm going to keep bringing it up. But that's the problem with like the original series as well, is like there's a lot of good stuff in there if you're already a fan
Yeah,
or if you grew up with it, but trying to show someone the original series now is very difficult because it's even older than Star Wars. It's like 60, almost 60 years old now at this point. So that's where like some of the other shows and movies are a little bit of a better introduction. And then if you really like it, then maybe go back to the original series. So I kind of have that same sort of vibe as well.
yeah. They will remake. They will remake it one day.
I wouldn't be surprised, but not. I feel like not anytime soon. Like they can't.
No,
I feel
no.
like that would get too much shit.
I think we're going to be in the old people's home, and we hear about it on the old
Yeah,
walkie.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be there. Back in my day. Um,
But no, this show is enjoyable. I didn't dislike
mhm,
it.
mhm,
I didn't love it. It
mhm,
existed. My main issue is the fact that it didn't need to exist.
mhm.
Well,
I could agree with that.
but we know why it exists.
I will. Okay, let me maybe talk about some positives that I thought were like
Hmm.
actually very good. I will say, at least in my opinion, and I'll try my best not to go too much detail, but I mean, as expected, Obi-Wan and Darth Vader do face off again.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they marketed it to hell. I think they actually released like a poster literally showing that the other day. But I mean, that's pretty much what people are expecting. So the at the end of I guess it's the last episode if I'm not mistaken, they do have a face off, and I will say they do a really good job of how they. It's not just Darth Vader fighting Obi-Wan, but they actually have like Anakin's emotions into it too, and they kind
Yeah,
of do a good
I
job
thought
of
that was
blending
good.
it.
I thought that was good.
Yeah,
The
I thought it
thing
was yeah.
the thing that's annoying with like prequels like this as well though is that you know both people are going to walk away from that fight, so there's no
Exactly.
tension there. Because
Hmm.
there's literally a bit where like Darth Vader does something and then walks away. I'm like,
Yes.
how do you?
Okay.
Yeah,
I know.
what? Just fucking kill him. And also,
I know.
Obi Wan walks
Yeah.
away. Kill him.
Exactly. I know exactly which part you're talking about, and that's where I was like practically saying like, here's your opportunity, just do it. And
Yeah,
obviously, we know it's not going to happen, but I agree. That's all,
you
and
could have
this is
writ
true of
around that. I
any.
think a bit better. Like,
Exactly. Like this is going to be a problem with any prequel type of thing. So on one hand, like I can't blame them per se because they're sort of boxed in, but yeah, to your point, that they could have found a different way to do that.
also,
So there's
Darth
that.
Vader's not as menacing now. I feel like in the original trilogy, he's
Mm,
like a scary dude. But now they like because he's in so much now,
mhm.
and it's just him chatting sometimes. Like I feel
Well,
it's not as intimidating.
I think that's the exact same issue that Boba Fett had, where in the
Hmm.
original trilogy he said like three lines in the entire trilogy, and he was this menacing figure.
Yeah,
But then now in the new show, he's just taking a bath half the time, and I'm like, who is this guy? Like, what's happening?
yeah. You're not adding to the character here in any meaningful way. Like you're just
Yeah. So that being said, though, and I'm trying to remember what the name of it is, but my wife has a book which I honestly don't know if it's canon or not anymore. But there is a book that is very well regarded about this time period between 3 and 4, where Darth Vader has to go on some like mission somewhere, and it's more about his emotions, like that are festering after losing to Obi-Wan. And
mhm.
I haven't read it. I think she has, and she said it's really good. And I think going either more into that or bringing in a little bit of that could have helped at least the emotional side of things a little bit. Maybe not the menacing side, but I guess
Yeah.
once again, my complaint, so to speak, is yes, I understand it's an Obi-Wan show, but I think it still would have been nice to hear from Darth Vader a little bit more or
Well,
Anakin, but I don't know how.
in the original trilogy, like Darth Vader, nearly every scene he's in, he's either menacing and everyone in the room's like scared of him, or he's
Yeah.
like smarter than everyone in that room, like
Right.
one ups them or things like that. Right?
Yeah.
He is always ahead of the game. He is always the strongest person there. He's always the smartest person there.
Mm.
Whereas now that he's been in more movies and more shows, I'm just like, I don't know, he fucks up a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's almost like too much exposure potentially. I will say, and they kind of gave a bit of I don't know if this was intentional or not, or if people are reading in too much into it, but the one scene where they kind of do a nod to the Force Unleashed games. I don't know if
I've
you
not played it. No.
so in the Force Unleashed games, which are even though those aren't canon anymore, they're still super fun. Or at least the first one I think was still holds up. There's it's a lot about force powers, as the name suggests, and you're literally taking down like starships with your force powers, like from the sky.
When he
And
grabs the
so
ship.
yeah, so in this show he kind of does that, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, is that like a nod to the Force Unleashed?" Where because Darth Vader is in that game as well, and bringing a ship down. And even if it's not, I thought that was kind of cool, like actually showing his power to just bring down a ship
Hmm.
with Force powers. But obviously, as you're saying, if he can do that, then why didn't he just kill Obi-Wan like later in the next
Remember when
episode?
Yoda struggled to pick up a rock?
Remember when it was just puppets walking around?
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
so
I just I watch this stuff now, and I watch it because I have to, because
just obligation.
not obligation, but it's like half of the Star Wars stuff I enjoy.
Yeah.
And the world we live in now, if you don't watch things as they come out, they're spoiled.
Hmm.
The cameo at the end of this show was spoiled for me by
Hmm.
just a news site where it's like, how they got this in there, right? And I'm like, 2 days. two
Yeah.
days, right? I have been busy, I've been working, I've not had a chance to sit down with my wife to watch this show, and you've
Yep.
spoiled it. Thank you. I remember
Yeah.
watching Spider Man 1 on DVD because I didn't see it in the theatres, and none of that was spoiled for me. No one
Yeah.
I worked with, no one I went to school with, none of this never got spoiled, right?
Yeah. So funny enough, and we're not going to say who appears, but that's the thing too, is that wasn't the person who appears was not spoiled for me. However, I saw an article where it was essentially getting around it saying, "You'll never believe how X got into the final scene," but the headline itself was alluding to who it was without
Yeah.
saying it also by putting
They
in
think
like a
they're
little
being smart, and they're not. They're just ruining it for people.
right. So that in itself is already a spoiler where you're not saying who it is, but like, come the fuck on. Like, I pretty
Yeah.
much knew who it was at that point. And so sorry if now this is even more of a spoiler for anyone who watching, but I mean, at this point, you'll
You
probably
guess.
get it. You'll probably know. So, which was nice, regardless of the fact if it's spoiled or not. I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's nice to see too, I suppose.
I
But
will
yeah, so
say one last thing is Luke's in it, which is no spoiler because he's in the trailer, right?
mhm.
I wish they'd de-aged Mark Hamill for that.
It's like a 12-year-old.
Yeah,
Just have his normal head, but
that
like on
is the
a like
one time when I would have been okay with all this de-aging stuff.
that would have been fucking hilarious. I would absolutely watch that.
I
Oh,
just
actually,
I want the behind
it's-
the scenes of Mark Hamill on his knees, like pretending to be 12. Like,
see now, I would watch that. I would
yeah,
totally watch that. Well, funny enough that you'd say that. There is a certain. God, I don't think this is a spoiler. I'll be vague, but I'll send it to you after. But there's a character who was de-aged in Obi-Wan, but you could still kind of tell that it wasn't the best done. But then I saw like a random YouTuber say, "Oh, I tried de-aging instead," and I don't know what it is about these YouTubers who are
yeah.
doing better than like some of these mega corporations, but they did it infinitely better, and I'm like, how?
Yeah,
How is it?
it's like when you see on YouTube, someone's like, I remade Ocarina of Time in Unreal Engine 5, and I'm one
Right,
guy who did it in 2 months in my bedroom on my spare time. And
right.
then there's like EA re releasing Mass Effect, and they're like, yeah, we didn't put voice acting in because it's too much work.
Like just give someone an internship for something like from YouTube. Like holy hell! So
Hire
I'll send
this
it to
guy.
you. Yeah, seriously. Oh my god. So, anyways, so I guess as far as whether how to rank it, I will say I did enjoy it. I would give it a thumbs up. But like I said, the only thing I'll add to that is once again you kind of have to it kind of depends what you want to get out of it. Like I said, if you're expecting more revelation story, you're not going to get that here. But if you like seeing Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, then yeah, you'll probably still enjoy it. But it's it was cool to see it. I guess I can't say much else past that
I'd
per
give it a
se.
thumbs up. It's like a mild enjoyment.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing groundbreaking. It's like a show I saw, and I
Hmm.
wasn't angry. I saw it.
No Twitter outrage after this.
Yeah, only 3 death threats are coming out of this, which is below my normal 10.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, check it out. You'll probably have a decent time. And yeah, that's about it for that one. Okay, so Moon Knight.
yeah.
I guess also really quick before talking about Moon Knight, how would you say you've enjoyed like the Marvel Disney Plus shows?
First show, WandaVision, I thought was fantastic.
Hmm.
Then the second show was Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I thought was really bad.
Okay.
And then every show since I've somewhat enjoyed, if that makes sense. It's like the Obi-Wan shows where I'm like, yeah, okay. Like,
Yeah, because after that, okay, so WandaVision, I thought I agree, was awesome concept. I think towards the end, it got a little bit more of your typical Marvel like actiony stuff, which is it's whatever, it's
mhm.
fine. I still the
That was
concept,
also a
I
week to week show that was fun to watch and talk to people about.
yes, exactly,
Right,
yep,
like that is the first time since like Twin Peaks The Return or like Lost where like I've really been into like, oh, I can't wait for next week. What does this mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that was good. Falcon and Winter Soldier, I thought I, I'm I thought the intent and the story was good to keep pushing like those characters forward. Um, but as far as like, was it the most interesting thing to watch? Like, it was fine. Like, yeah, I don't remember a whole lot from it to be honest. Loki, I will say I liked the concept of. I thought, and I like Tom Hiddleston. He's great, and usually whatever he does. That the last episode, on one hand, was somewhat neat to see a reveal of a particular character who may or may not be showing up in other stuff. But I will say there's a particular part of Loki interacting with another character. I'll just leave it at that. That was weird to me. So like I liked the set design because it was really cool as
Yeah.
well. But it
That
was a
sort of
show that I'm like.
70s retro.
Exactly. They took some good care to do that. But it was fine. And then you had Hawkeye, which was like,
I enjoyed Hawkeye.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, but once again, it didn't, I don't know, it didn't do a whole lot for me per
Yeah.
se either. It was, I guess the cool thing was it was a Christmas show, I guess you could
Yeah,
say that.
yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of these shows, and I'm probably going to say the same for Moon Knight, is I enjoy while I'm watching them, and about a month afterwards, I struggle to remember anything of much that happened in them.
Yeah. And because, so like I said, and now, yeah, we're getting into Moon Knight. And wait, I think that's it, right? After Hawkeye,
I
then
didn't
Moon Knight.
enjoy What If that much, if I'm honest.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. What If, which was an animated kind
Yeah.
of show about all these alternate
I thought
possibilities.
that
One,
was a really cool idea for a show. I just thought the
mhm,
episodes felt so rushed and
mhm.
unneeded a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very much a fan of that type of like short form storytelling, kind of like Twilight Zone
Mm.
esque sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm staying with you. I'm like, there were a couple where like, okay, I had a good time. This was a neat concept, but yeah, nothing
The
I'm
actual
like super.
story. Most of the time, I thought the idea was cool. Like, what if Black Panther was Star Lord? I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be a
Mhm.
cool idea. And then they show it to you, and you go, yeah, it was better in my head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But oddly enough, some of what they showed in What If ended up being important for the new Doctor Strange movie, I guess, technically.
Kind of. You
To
didn't
an
need to see
to an
it though,
extent.
did you? You got the
Well,
point.
yeah, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say important, but I guess it was tied into it a little
Yeah.
bit. I'll leave it at that, I suppose. But then yeah, then Moon Knight. So and oh, sorry, I guess Miss Marvel is going on now, but I haven't watched that one yet. But
Mm. I'm like
um,
halfway through it. Yeah.
okay, so yeah, Moon Knight. I will say I was intrigued for a few reasons when that got announced. So as I think I've said before, I used to read like the single issue kind of Marvel comics back in high school and a little bit into college. And I mean, I still read comics, but I don't do as much like, monthly stuff. I usually wait for like compilations and stuff. But Moon Knight was one character I feel like I heard of, but I essentially knew nothing about because
Hmm.
he wasn't ever like super popular or anything per se. Um, so when they announced it and I started reading up on Moon Knight, I was like, okay, you got some cool ideas. So he has, well, I guess what's now known as dissociative identity disorder. So he kind of has these multiple personalities, and so they all do different things. And then it's Egyptian, which I feel like you don't see, unless I'm mistaken, we haven't really seen too much of that sort of environment in the Marvel stuff. I don't know, unless
I
I'm
think
not
they went there in
remember.
a Transformers movie.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Marvel adjacent, maybe.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was new, and then Oscar Isaac, I love. He's just a great actor, so I was happy to see him. And then you have Ethan Hawke. Actually, speaking of, we got two Hawks in this episode because we got Maya Hawke in
Right,
Stranger
right.
Things,
I've
and then
got a issue with Ethan Hawkins.
okay, let's hear
And
it.
this isn't really a spoiler, right? Because the first
Sure.
episode opens with him putting glass in his shoe.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like walking around, and you hear it all the time, right? Every time he walks.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, it wouldn't make that noise because it would be flat in his shoe and not moving.
Right.
Um, they never say why. I guess he's trying to punish himself in some way.
Um, I suppose.
But
Yeah.
it
I
just
mean, I guess.
became this sound that was always there whenever he was walking around, and it weren't. I thought it was going to play into a part where like Oscar Isaac's like hiding,
Mhm.
and like they're all trying to sneak around, and he can hear Ethan Hawke where he is because of the glass in the shoe, right? And he's like, "Ah,
Yeah.
I've got one up on you, mate, because you're an idiot." He's gonna like jump out and
Maybe.
punch him, but it
Maybe
just
just maybe just likes doing it.
he's got a weird kink or something.
Yeah, he's just a real fucked up dude. Yeah, I mean, I guess to briefly go into it, basically you have this guy named Stephen Grant who he loves Egypt. He has this fascination with it, but he also knows that he has this other alter or another personality. Um, and then eventually that lends into turning into Moon Knight, essentially. And then you have Ethan Hawke's character, who's kind of like, I don't know if I want to say cult leader per se, but he's essentially part of this group to kind of bring back this god who's going to, balance the earth and whatever. Like it's some mythology stuff like that.
Yeah, I can't remember that well. I think that says a lot more about it. Is in
Sure.
my head, bad guy bad
Yeah,
is essentially what it boiled down to.
yeah, yeah. I mean, more. I mean, that's a lot of these types of Marvel stuff, to be honest. But
Yeah,
yeah.
but
Um,
yeah, it felt like a very unnecessary show.
okay.
Now, I like the Marvel shows when they do their own thing,
Hmm.
but this seems to have no bearing on anything whatsoever.
So, okay, that could, in my opinion, I think that could be both good and bad. So
Yeah.
it's bad, quote unquote, in the sense that, yeah, like this show. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, really, at the end of the day, has had almost no, if not completely, no interaction with the rest of the MCU,
Hmm.
like that I can remember at all. I mean, maybe like a little Easter egg hint, maybe once or twice, barely. So if you're wanting for that connection, then yeah, it's not here. But on the good side, I think that frees them up a little bit to kind of take some liberties and not have to have like, oh, at the last minute you have like Hulk coming in to save, just to have it in there or something like that. So
Yeah.
I will say I appreciated it for that.
Yeah, but I also watched this and was like, he could have just turned up in like the Blade movie,
Hmm.
and like you didn't need
Well,
all of this. Like,
but I guess then, well, this is also what we talked about, I think, last time or the time before. It's about maybe this need to give every single person an origin story, whereas where you were saying, like, well, in the X-Men movies, they kind of just showed up and we're just there, right?
yeah,
So I guess there was maybe potentially that desire to tell this story, and I wouldn't be surprised if he now then shows up in something else down the line.
I think he's going to be
Um,
with that guy from Eternals, the one who got the sword.
got it. Okay, I
Yeah,
could see that
yeah,
because Eternals was so popular, right?
yeah. Well, I also thought I can't remember Eternals that well, but I thought he was in Eternals. They teach at a museum, don't they?
I don't remember much from Eternals. I
The
got to be
guy
honest.
Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, Kit
Ah,
Harington.
okay, so
He's like teaching at a museum, and I thought it was going to be the museum that
that's a good.
Oscar Isaac's working at, right?
Yeah,
I thought there
well,
was going to
maybe
be some
that's
tie-in there,
yeah.
and I couldn't. I'm from London, and I couldn't remember what museum was in Eternals the entire time I was watching this. I'm like, is it the same museum or not?
Maybe it could be. Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I'll say I agree that like yeah, does this have a whole lot of bearing on the rest of the ongoing story? Not so much, but I would also say that I don't know what the ongoing story of the MCU is lately anyway, so I'm
No.
like I feel like I don't that didn't bother me as much personally. But I will say though, I do like the idea of the character, and basically, I think the funniest thing about this is after we finished it, or kind of while we were watching it, I should say, I actually started looking up what are some of the best like Moon Knight comics to read because like I do want to actually read some of the comics, and there are a couple now that I probably want to check out that are like some of the best that really like show a lot of what a lot of people like about Moon Knight. So I might potentially come back to it in that sense, which I think is cool, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they had some cool special effects and well, I guess maybe not. I shouldn't say special effects. I mean, yes, that's in there too. But the fact that you had Oscar Isaac playing off of himself,
Yeah.
because there's multiple people,
He's
and
the
I
best
kind
part of the show is Oscar Isaac.
yeah, and he even actually. So, as a quick side note, another thing that Disney Plus does that I really enjoy for most, I think all of the Marvel shows and some of the Star Wars ones, they do like behind the scenes like follow up documentary. So, if you like learning about that crap, I would highly recommend watching them. I find it fascinating. But I watched there was one for Moon Knight that I also watched after I finished it, and they were going into more behind the scenes of it, and they were actually showing that in some of those scenes they had Oscar's brother
Mm.
play the other person, and they had to, they cut it appropriately so it still looks like Oscar. But I thought that was pretty funny that they had to do that a couple of times, and so that was a fun thing to watch. But yeah, so that was a good part of it. Oh, actually, really quick, okay, I'm gonna start asking you this anytime we watch anything where you have an American doing a British accent. So can you rate his accent for
I
me?
thought it was
How do you
pretty. I
feel?
thought it was pretty good, but I think I told you before that I didn't know Oscar Isaac was American.
Really?
Yeah, you get some actors where, like Tom Holland, for instance, like he never
Mm-hmm.
does an English accent in films and shows,
Yeah.
but then you see interviews with him, and you're like, oh yeah, that's his actual voice and stuff like that. And for some reason, I just always had, I guess I've never seen him give an interview or anything like that.
Yeah.
I thought Oscar Isaac was an English guy who does American accents in shows,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah, it's
he's
it's
not.
yeah, it's jarring. That's happened to me a couple times when I first heard Christian Bale speak in an interview, I was like, "Wait a minute, what? This doesn't
Yeah,
sound right to me." Or Gillian Anderson from X-Files,
yeah.
she speaks with a British accent. And you know what the funny one that just happened to me yesterday? So from Ted Lasso, Keely, like
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
the she plays the girlfriend of and the other stuff in the show. I mean, she is British, like that is her accent. But I'm watching a different show that she's in where she's doing an American accent, and it just sounds so weird. I
Yeah.
like can't. It takes me a minute to like process what I'm hearing. It's just funny to watch.
Yeah, I
But
don't know if that's ever happened. Like, I've had times where, like, the lead guy from Walking Dead's English, and I didn't even know he was English.
wait, Norman Reedus?
No, 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 not him, not him. The main guy, the main guy. What's his name? Rick Grimes in the show.
Oh, I mean I haven't watched it,
Yeah, he's
so
like
that's the only person I
the
know.
sheriff guy,
Ah,
right?
okay, got it,
And
got it.
I didn't even know he was English, and then like saw an interview of him just
Hmm.
talking. I'm like, oh, he's got an English accent, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's ever happened to me where I just assume someone's English and does an American accent in movies and shows before. But then, like,
uh,
I Googled it after watching Moon Knight because my wife,
mm,
it came on conversation. She was like,
yeah.
she's American. She's like, no, he's American. I'm like, you sure? And I Google it. I'm like, what the fuck?
When did this happen?
When did he stop being English?
I think I have an idea for a new tier list video: best Mockney accents from different actors.
Nah.
We got to do it. So,
Oh,
anyway, sorry, different tangent. But, anyways, yeah, Oscar Isaac, he does a great job. I mean, I think Ethan Hawke does a good job as
yeah,
well.
no
I
one does
enjoyed
a
seeing
bad
him.
job. I think it was a bit of an anticlimactic show. It turns into a big fight at the end with nothing that interesting going on.
Well, I will say the actual like the end, not just the fight, but like the actual ending of the show, I will say was a little lackluster.
Yeah,
It leaves it in a, I mean, I guess you could say it's cliffhanger-ish, not completely, but
yeah.
I'll say it introduces a character that hadn't showed up yet. Um, which like cool, but then I don't know, I don't get the feeling that they're going to continue this too much, or unless they bring it to like
The movie.
another movie
Well,
or something.
here's
But
here's the thing. There's sort of like a twist halfway through, and to say it without spoilers, but the asylum.
hmm hmm
I thought that would have been such a cooler road to go down. Just stick with that.
yeah.
And then it's like, oh, actually, no. And I'm like, oh, that would have just been like such a cooler. And also with his psychosis problems as well, it would have made sense.
Right, yeah, they kind of this is almost like half like mind games type of show, but then half like Indiana Jones, and I feel like they were trying to mash the stuff up a little bit. I'm not like dogging it too much on that, but yeah, I feel like well, kind of similar to what I said, where like the end of WandaVision sort of turned into like another actiony, like typical Marvel setup, and it seems like a lot of these shows just keep doing that,
Hmm.
and not ever. And like we've said with video games, not every video game has to have a final boss, and
Hmm.
not every TV show or movie has to have this final mega fight. It doesn't have to do that. You
No.
can just end or take it in a direction where it's about the character development and stuff like that. So I kind of agree with you on that one. They could have leaned more on that side, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I'd give it like the
yeah.
softest thumbs up you can give.
hmm
I didn't dislike it, but
Yeah.
I feel like even saying good is a bit much. I feel
hmm
like okay,
Yeah.
like that's it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I liked the intent or the concept way more than the execution. Um, and then other than like the main actors themselves doing a great job, yeah, it was kind of just like, I could have gotten more out of this. I don't know what per se, or maybe to your point, a slightly different direction they could have taken it. But yeah, I'm the same way. Where like, yeah, I think you're gonna enjoy it. There's nothing like horrible about it or anything. But to your point, in another month or so, I'm gonna try and remember what a lot of this was about.
Yeah,
So take that for what you will. But yeah, like I said, as another quick aside, if you like behind the scenes stuff, I would also check out that behind the scenes, not just for this, but some of the other Marvel stuff as well. So as an FYI, if you're into that sort of thing. But cool. All
all
right.
right.
So we had a longer one, but we had some good ones to get through. So once again, if you're into these shows, if you watch them, let us know down below as well what you thought. Did you like any of the twists and turns? Do you have ideas where some of this could have gone? Do you have your own, once again, fan theories and fan fiction about Obi-Wan and Darth, getting back
Did they
together? I'd love to
kiss
hear
in
them.
between episode 3 and 4?
See, that's season 2 coming. That's what we're going to get next time. They're going to rematch yet again,
Yeah.
actually. But yeah, if you haven't followed us on here already or subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button and let us know what you think. And you can of course follow us pretty much everywhere else on Tojo Dojo as well. So until next time, where we'll talk about even more fun stuff. See you then.
Bye.